Good morning, everyone. My name is Philippa Kelly. I am the Strategic Sites Manager for Greater Cambridge Shared Planning Service. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Joint Development Control Committee, which is taking place at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the 21st of June, 2023. I'm going to cover the election of the Chair, and I will then hand over to the Chair to continue this meeting. For the benefit of new members and members of the public, I will roll call councillors alphabetically to confirm that they are present. We have received apologies from South Cambridgeshire District Council Councillor Stobart, and Councillor Garvey will attend as alternate. Also, we have received apologies from Councillor Flobert of the City Council. Councillor Levine will be attending as alternate. Are you present, Cambridge City Council councillors Bagent?
Yes.
Horror?
Present.
Smart?
Present.
Smith? S.
Present.
Smith? Thornborough?
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Levine?
Present.
Thank you. And South Cambridgeshire District Council councillors Bradnam?
Present.
Khan?
Present.
Fain?
Present.
Garvey?
Present.
Hawkins? Thank you. And R. Williams?
Present.
Thank you. Could any member advise if their name has not been called out or if there are any other apologies? Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 1, the election of chair. The JDCC's standing orders provide that the chair and the vice chair shall be drawn alternately from each of the two authorities. As the chair position was held by the City Council last year and the vice chair position held by a South Cambs councillor, this municipal year the chair position should be held by a South Cambridgeshire District Council councillor and the vice chair position held by a City Councillor. I will now ask for the names of any South Cambridgeshire councillors for nomination for the role of committee chair.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Emma Bradnam for the role of committee chair.
Thank you. I also need a seconder.
I would like to second Councillor Bradnam for committee chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam, are you prepared for your name to go forward to be chair?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the offer of a second from Katie Porra as well.
Are there any other nominations? No, so I can confirm that Councillor Bradnam is elected as chair of this committee for the rest of the municipal year. I will now hand over to Councillor Bradnam to chair the rest of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for electing me. I take that as an indication of trust in me, and I appreciate that. So, can I ask for a City Councillor nomination for Vice Chair, please? I'll need a proposer and a seconder for each name. So, Katie Thornborough, sorry.
I'd like to propose Simon Smith.
Thank you. And do you have a seconder? Councillor Smart.
I'm happy to second that.
Katie Porra, thank you. Thank you very much. So do we have any other nominations for Vice Chair? No, so that means, good, Simon Smith is, Councillor Smith is elected, so thank you very much indeed. So I can confirm that Councillor Smith is Vice Chair of the committee for the rest of the municipal year. So the officers present. Thank you. So the officers present for this meeting are the Strategic Sites Manager, Philippa Kelly, the Legal Advisor, Richard Pitt, the Committee Manager, Sarah Steed, and the Producer, James Goddard. Other officers and public speakers will join us through the course of the meeting, and I'll introduce them at the start of the relevant, or perhaps invite them to introduce themselves at the start of the relevant agenda items. So just a few items of housekeeping. Can I highlight to members that the July JDCC meeting, the forthcoming meeting, will take place in person at Camborne, at South Cambs Hall, I assume. Can I have an indication for attendance at the 16th of August JDCC meeting? I assume this is because there's concerns about quoracy, so I will attend the 16th of August meeting. Can we have a show of hands for those people who will be able to attend that? We're not doing very well on numbers here. Is nobody aware? Is nobody here? The question is, will you be able to attend the meeting on the 16th of August, which we've been given in pre-indications of dates? So do you want to scramble around and look at your diaries? And I'll ask that again later.
Don't we normally meet here? Are we going to go to Campbell?
I suspect the reason is because we're not able to meet here. Ms. Steed, would you like to explain?
Chair, if I may, for the July meeting, ARU have booked out the Guildhall for the graduation, so there's nowhere to actually hold the meeting, and we felt it might be prudent to use Camborne, given that South Cambs members are also part of the committee. So just for the July meeting, we'll be at Camborne.
And I think we've had that on a previous occasion where we couldn't meet here in August because of the ARU graduation ceremony. So has that given you time to check your diaries for the 6th? Oh, sorry, Countess Smart.
Directly answer your question, I don't have a holiday or anything booked then, so that's fine. But I've said before, I think that meetings of this council, or youth councils, certainly this council, should happen in this council building for preference, not be pushed out to some other place because of a hire. And I know we make money out of hires, but surely Cambridge City Council is the most important thing happening in the Guildhall, not some other booking. And I just think that these bookings should either come at a different time or not come at all. Because what are we here for? We're not here to make money out of bookings. We're here to run the council. So that's my strong opinion, Chair.
I hear your point, but I note that there's a general awareness that it's not unreasonable to move around to different venues when that becomes necessary. And I don't think it's unreasonable that for one meeting in the year that we come to South Cambs District Council for the meeting. At least we have the facility to offer on the day when this room is not available. I take your point, Councillor Smart. So, sorry, yes.
Appreciate, Chair. Just to be clear, I'm not against going to South Cambs building. It's not that. It's about this building not being used for our council meetings. That's the bit that
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think there might be an arrangement with Anglia Ruskin. I'm not sure, and that's for others to clarify. However, Councillor Smart, will you be able to attend a meeting on the 16th of August? Hurrah, thumbs up. Is there anybody else who won't be able to attend that meeting on the 16th of August? So that's Councillor Thornborough, Councillor Smith, Councillor Khan. Okay. And then the other one, which... Thank you so much, Councillor Williams. That's great. And then the other one that we'd like to know is, will you be able to attend, could you indicate similarly if you will be able to attend the meeting on the 20th of September? Again, that's one that we've had forewarning of the date. I'll put it the other way round. Is there anybody who won't be able to attend on the 20th? So that's Councillor Bajent. Looks like the only one. Actually, one of those with. I'll get back to you afterwards. Okay, so copies of the agenda can be found on the City Council's website under committee meetings, minutes and agendas. Please can those present in the chamber note that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, may be broadcast at some point. The camera follows the microphone being switched on, so councillors and officers are requested to wait a couple of seconds before speaking to allow the camera to catch up. And please raise your hands if you wish to speak. And those participating in the meeting via Microsoft Teams, if you could indicate your wish to speak via the chat column or a raised hand, and please don't use the chat column for any other purpose. The meeting chat is neither confidential nor private and can be subject to an FOI or GDPR request. So you will be aware from the agenda that it consists of 2 developer briefings, and the process for each briefing will be that the officer or developers will be invited to present for between 20 to 30 minutes. Members of the committee will then be able to ask questions for up to 30 minutes. Could we just, before we go on to that, could councillors advise if they have any declarations of interest and also identify which item their declaration relates to? And if you remember, we have applications on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus and on, what's the other one? Cambridge International Technology Park. Has anybody any declarations? Councillor Bagent.
Member of Cambridge Cycling Campaign Chair.
Thank you very much. Any others? Councillor Richard Williams.
Chair, this may not be a declaration of interest, but because we didn't have any papers, I couldn't really check who's behind the Cambridge Technology Park development. But just to say, I do work for the University of Cambridge, if it is in any way involved. I wasn't able to establish whether it was, but just in case it is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Khan. Sorry.
My son is currently finishing a PhD working on the Cambridge Biomedical, not PhD, a master's course working on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, but I approached this afresh.
You approach this afresh. Thank you very much. Okay. So, item 4, we just need to look at the minutes of previous meetings, members. So firstly, it's the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of March. Can we just confirm that those are a true record of the meeting? Does anybody have any points they wish to raise? These were in the agenda pack. No? So you're happy that I sign those? Can I propose that I sign these as a true record of the meeting? You happy with that? By affirmation? Thank you. I'll do one page now. That. Secondly, the minutes of the meeting on the 5th of April. Does anybody have any questions to raise about that or any clarifications? No? So can I propose that I sign these as true record of the meeting? Okay. Can I take that by affirmation? Lovely. Thank you very much. So before we proceed with the pre-application developer briefing for the Cambridge International Technology Park, I'm going to ask our planning solicitor, Richard Pitt, to just say a few words to remind us about member conduct for this sort of briefing. Mr. Pitt.
Well, thank you. Morning, members. So just to confirm that the pre-application briefing today is to bring members up to date with progress of the emerging development proposals so far and provide factual information on the proposed changes to the external appearances, internal changes to the car park and landscaping. Members will want to keep any questions following the briefing to open questions and refrain from making any statements that could be interpreted as bias or influencing the proposed design. Please bear in mind that the proposed application is not for discussion today. Members will want to ensure that they make no comment or offer any opinion that would preclude them from sitting on the committee when the application is brought before it. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Pitt. So, please can the developers introduce themselves and their colleagues assisting with the presentation, and I'll invite councillors to ask questions once the presentation has finished. And I'll just remind you again, members are encouraged to ask open questions, seek clarification on the developer's presentation, and are reminded not to express any opinions on the presentation, anything that would imply a closed mind. So, developers, thank you.
Thank you.
So if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Yes,
please.
of course. On the screen, we have Orestes with us. Orestes, do you want to introduce as the applicant?
I think you might need to be a bit closer to your microphone.
sorry.
Or speak to it. Thank you.
Orestes, do you want to introduce yourself from the screen as the applicant?
Sure, yes, indeed. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, councillors. My name is Orestes Georgiou. I'm the Vice President for Development with Biomed Realty, who's the applicant for the application for today.
Thank you. I'm Jenny Hainsworth of Bidwell's Planning, with the planning agents. Ed?
I'm Ed Hayden, Scott Brownrigg Architects.
Sean Vesey, Design Director of Liz Lake Associates, Landscape Architects.
And we also have with us on Teams Martin Crabtree. Martin,
Good morning, everyone. Martin Crabtree from Braintree Hall, Highways and Transport Consultant.
So the site of the International Technology Park is allocated site in the South Cambs local plan under policy E3, Fulbourn Road East, 6.9 hectares, allocated site for employment use. And planning permission was granted last November for a hybrid application, so outline for employment use and a detailed permission for phase 1, which includes building 3 and a multi-storey car park. So this application is for a section 73 minor material amendment, just for minor changes to the scheme. And I'll hand across to Ed and Orestes.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now hand over to Orestes, who will introduce Biomed Realty.
Thank you. Thank you both. Yes, with a brief introduction for context here, a bit on the history of the site. So we acquired the site in August 2021 from the previous developers that had brought forward their design and submitted the application that was referred to by my colleagues. Biomed Realty is a specialist landlord and provider of real estate solutions for primarily the life science and technology industries. We've been active in Cambridge for about 10 years, just over 10 years now. We have got a footprint of just over 1 million square feet of operational real estate, comprising assets at Granta Park, Babraham Research Campus, and the Cambridge Science Park. And this is one of our latest sort of developments that we are seeking to bring forward to address the pent-up demands for specialist facilities in the Cambridge region. The business has been operating for more than 20 years globally. You'll see here on this slide our international presence, primarily focusing around a number of established clusters. You'll note on the East Coast, or the Cambridge, Boston, Mass area is our biggest footprint, our biggest market there. And then on the West Coast, we've got a number of outposts in San Diego, the Bay Area of San Francisco, Seattle, and then Boulder in Colorado. The common theme of these clusters is traditionally centered around a academic institution of excellence, so a number of world-leading universities. The ecosystems are very strong in terms of their presence of established pharma companies, sort of strong in the biotech sector. Incubators, again, very strong. The funding mechanisms for companies as they continue growing, but also indeed the talent pool where these companies can resource from, across the sectors, so to speak. The next slide, I think if we can go on to the next slide, here we go. Our business model is centered around relationships. Those relationships span across a number of different stakeholders. You'll see here a number of our tenants, partners, with whom we forged very long-standing relationships. Those span more than one geographies and enable them to undertake scientific research within the specialist facilities that we, in most cases, deliver but also operate on their behalf, especially for the growing businesses. And we've seen that very successfully in Cambridge, where we've delivered over the last 10 years a combination of bespoke facilities. Those are usually more important for the larger tenants, that have got more specialist requirements, but also more flexible laboratory environments for growing businesses that may not necessarily have the know-how or indeed the capital to bring this forward. And that was something that we pioneered at Babraham Research Campus with UKRI for the first time in the UK about 5 years ago. We also have a number of strong relationships across our geographies with local stakeholders. We pride ourselves in building those relationships as a long-term investor in our communities with a number of programs that look at how we can spread the benefits to local communities through local employment schemes, looking at biodiversity initiatives, sustainability initiatives, and so on. The purpose, I think, of today's application, whilst the scheme was, as the team mentioned, a hybrid application, this focuses on phase 1, and the aim here is to try and bring forward a number of what we regard as enhancements to the application, to do two things: address some of the, if you like, legacy concerns surrounding the vernacular, the look and feel of the building, and how they bed in better with the local, if you like, feel of Cambridge, but also importantly to bring forward a number of enhancements surrounding amenity space. We felt that the site hasn't provided on-site amenity that would benefit the tenant base, but also the community itself, and indeed the flexibility of the first building as it relates to being able to capture as much of that pent-up demand as possible in terms of its design and performance. So that is what the aim of this application is about. Ed, if I can pass on back to you to talk us through the detail of that.
Thank you, Orestes. I will just locate the site. So we are on the southern fringe of Cambridge. As you can see on the top left-hand corner there, we are situated southeast of Cambridge city centre and Cambridge station, and within the Cherry Hinton area, next to Fulbourn Hospital and adjacent to Peterhouse Technology Park. The area we're talking about is the area outlined in red. That's the permitted application, with the area around that being in outline. And the yellow arrow indicates a desire to be able to connect through to Peterhouse Technology Park in the future. So the scheme is aligned to allow that to happen, and to build a bit of connectivity with the rest of the development along the Fulbourn Road. This slide indicates the two parts of the hybrid application. The red line is the outline planning application. So nothing has been really determined there apart from some indicative massing. And then the detailed planning application is indicated in the zone marked in green. We're talking really about the detailed application and the changes we'd like to make to that in this meeting. The schedule of changes we'd like to make, we've listed them here, there are 8 changes. We would like to change from 100% office to a mix of 60% office and 60% laboratory space and 40% office. 2, we would like to add an amenities building into the scheme. 3 is revised appearance. 4 is revised landscape to complement that appearance. Number 5 is a reduction in the car parking from the permitted 915 spaces to 808. 6 is an increase in the permitted cycle parking provision from 366 to 426. 7 is an increase in the accessible cycle parking spaces from 28 to 86 spaces. And 8 is an inclusion for an e-scooter parking provision in the scheme. So I'll run through each one of those in sequence. So the first slide shows the floor plan, and that's the ground floor plan of the building. The building height, bulk, mass and footprint all remain as they were, so it's keeping within the permitted design for height, bulk, mass. And we can see here that the permitted building was 100% office, and we intend to change that to 60% laboratory and 40% office as a mix. It will be a flexible mix, so it may be, depending on tenancies, it may be a mix, I'll be flexible number. The car park, we had 915 spaces with no amenities, and it had cycle parking within it. We've now got a reduction to 808 spaces to allow, in the same bulk and mass as the permitted scheme, the introduction of a cafe, gym, and community amenities on the corner of the building, which is a reduction overall of 107 spaces. And I would point out that a change from 100% office to a more lab-based scheme means a reduction in traffic generation overall, because laboratories are occupied at a much lower density than offices. I'll just briefly go through the floor plans to show you the amenities. So the cycle store has been increased to 426 total spaces, with 340 stacked cycle spaces and 86 Sheffield Hoop spaces. So, and repair bays have been introduced. Parking, as I say, has been reduced. And then if we look at the amenities building, which is, as I say, within the footprint of the permitted design, we have 3 floors. The ground floor has a new cafe space and showers and changing area. On the first floor, there's a cafe breakout and gym. And on the second floor, there's a community multi-use room and some small mini office rentable space which could be used by, it's flexible, it could be used by local communities. The next amendment I'd like to talk about is the facade treatment. The facade treatment previously was quite a glass and aluminium approach. It was kind of blue and glassy. The amendments that we'd like to make are the treatment of that to reduce the amount of glass and to reflect a more, what we call modern Cambridge vernacular. And we've got some reference images here. Cordia, of course, Sainsbury's Laboratory, the Zahid Centre for Research, and there's also a little photo there of Trinity Lane, which is just something that we've referenced in the design. These sketches show the amended facades, so much more solid material, 2 different angles, more solar shading for enhancement of the sustainability criteria. And so coming on to that, the improvements we will make is increased water efficiency, we look very closely at material strategies. So all of these are enhancements on the permitted scheme. Sustainable transport improvements with the cycle improvements, ecological enhancements that Sean will talk about, an increase in the renewable energy provision of the buildings, PVs, community outreach with the community facilities, an increase in health and well-being with the amenities that we're providing, and a more energy efficient building in the improvements in the facade treatment.
Sean?
The first slide that we're showing here shows to the top left is the consented scheme, landscape design, and the bottom is the MMA application scheme. The fundamentals of the landscape design hasn't changed in terms of materiality. The quality of the scheme is still apparent. What we are doing is aligning more with the architectural facades, and we're also changing some of the material in terms of the colour of the hard landscape and creating a pedestrianised plaza which runs from the north-south. Okay, just knock onto the next page. As you can see from the next slide, we've got, from the consented scheme, we still have the strong buffer to the south, as well adjacent to the green belt, as you know. To the southern edge of the development, we're creating pockets of where workers can come out and socialise. That's a southern-facing space. The plaza that runs the north-south, as we just touched upon, has been slightly realigned. So we are now creating linear lines, belts of paving, and that in turn coordinates with soft planting beds and seating areas. We're also bringing in recreational activities. So we're bringing in outdoor barbecue areas, table tennis, and other social activities. So it's a much more encompassing landscape. The next slide sort of shows the mass scale of the section through the main plaza. In terms of the actual planting itself, we've got some specimen trees that run linearly along the space. So that helps break the mass of the paving. We've got seating areas, as we touched upon, and we're also bringing in some amenities activities as well. What I should specify here as well is that the majority of this space will be suds, so we'll be collecting a lot of the water and draining that towards either underground basins, which is in the outline application. Just a couple of quick slides just to touch upon the soft landscaping and how we're integrating the soft with facades. So a much more buff-coloured facade, so we're bringing in more hues in terms of tonal contrast. There's seasonal interest, so we're bringing in herbaceous planting, where it's shady ferns and grasses as well. So we've got one eye on sustainability and reduced water techniques as well. Another slide just shows the fundamentals of the section through the main facade. So how we're integrating with the access points to the parking areas and how we can direct people and visitors to the main access points of the building.
Martin, would you like to touch upon the improvements on the sustainable transport strategy?
Yeah, sure, Ed. Yeah, so as Ed mentioned, the provision of lab space will result in a lower ratio of employees per square metre. This will mean that the vehicle trip generation is predicted to be reduced from that previously anticipated. This will be around 50 trips in both the morning and evening peak hour. Consequently, the reduction in the number of car parking spaces included in the multi-storey car park and that of the increase in cycle provision aligns to this demand. As part of the planning permission, there was a requirement to monitor the surrounding residential streets to ensure that there was no displacement parking. And if this was observed, mitigation measures such as residential parking zones would be implemented at the expense of the applicant. There are many other measures to promote sustainable travel to the site. These include, but not limited to, the provision of the detailed travel plan that will incorporate a whole raft of measures and initiatives. There will also be, when the critical mass of employees is reached, the intention to provide a dedicated bus service to help commuters to and from the site. There is also the contribution towards the sustainable infrastructure, including the Fulbourn to Cambridge Greenway, and also the real-time passenger information displays at 2 nearby bus stops, and also the e-scooter parking provision that Ed mentioned earlier on.
Thank you, Martin.
Cheers, Ed.
Yeah, thanks Ed, just to finish up on the landscape, this is just a visual which shows the the level changes to the southern boundary and how we're bringing in the more native buffer planting to the south. So this is much more in keeping with the surrounding context.
And finally, we've got some artist impressions showing the proposed amendment. So if you see in the small image, that is the permitted and approved scheme, which is, as I say, more metallic and more glassy. And so we are going for this softer, more modern Cambridge vernacular materials in the scheme, which will be obviously in the condition discharge. Another view looking across the centre of the park, and so the office and laboratory buildings on the left here, and a new amenity building on the corner is facing us on the right, with the car parking adjacent to that. And another view from the landscaping, the approach to the buildings. And once again, you can see the permitted scheme in the top right-hand corner. And as I say, keeping to the same bulk mass footprint that we had previously. And final view of a similar thing. And that's the end of the presentation, and we are now open to questions, please.
Thank you very much to all of you for your presentations. And can I just check, the MMA, does that relate to the company? I mean, I'm assuming MMA relates to the new proposal. Okay, right, okay. Okay, that's fine, thank you. Okay, so members, remind you, we're asking open questions. So, Councillor Smart.
I'll make sure it's an open question. So just glad I went at the start, because I'm not quite clear what's happening here. So I wasn't on this committee last year, I have been before. Pre-application developer briefing, there's not much text in the report. So why are we here? Why is this briefing being made by these developers? Because we're not making a decision today, are we? So
no, that's correct.
I presume this is because they've decided to change their application and want to brief us, and then they come forward at next time. Is that the way it's working?
Would you like to let Philippa Kelly answer your question?
So the scheme was originally refused by members of JDCC, but then went to planning appeal, and the scheme was allowed at planning appeal. So we have a consented scheme. The developers are looking to make changes to that scheme, which was allowed on appeal, and to regularise those changes, they will need a minor material amendment application, or a section 73, as we call it. So they will need to formalise that through the planning process, and that application will come back to committee in due course formally. So here is an opportunity for you to review the emerging proposals and take the opportunity to sort of ask questions, find out more information about the scheme as it's evolving. So basically to inform you more in advance of the application returning to you at a later date for formal determination.
Thank you very much,
help?
Philippa. Thank you. Answers your question. Councillor Smart, do you want to come back?
Yes, so thanks for that. So I have got a few questions, but I don't want to sort of rattle through all mine and nobody else. So I don't know if you want to organise it.
How many have you got in total, Councillor Smart?
Sort of half a page. Let's go through if you like. But
Let's start with 3 or 4 to begin with,
okay,
and then I'll take questions from somebody else.
I sort of made notes in terms of I think 4 speakers. So there was landscape and stuff like that, different things. So firstly, it feels like a major makeover of this scheme. It's like a new scheme, it seems to me, the way it looks, the way it feels, everything like that. But
can I reassure you it's not? It's
well, you can say that, but that's the way it feels to me, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor Smart, if you just let me speak. As they've explained, there are changes to the appearance of the building, but not the footprint. There are changes to the internal arrangements in the main building, and there are amendments to the internal arrangement in the car park. Anyway, carry on with your questions.
Okay, I thought I'd just start with that anyway. I mean, I'm saying that on the basis that it's looking like a sort of stone-type building as opposed to a glassy-type building.
Sorry, can I just remind you, you need at this point not to express opinions or views. You're entitled at this point in a developer briefing just simply to ask questions of clarification.
No, I like stone
I'm only
glass
saying that
buildings,
to
Chair.
protect you, because otherwise you might not be able to, if you say anything now which would indicate a predetermination, you might not be able to speak on committee. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much for that, Chair. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Do go ahead.
So, getting on to the details. So, Aratus, you said I'll just rattle through then if you want to make notes. So, you said local employment schemes. So, if we could talk a bit more about that. You talked about the vernacular, local vernacular. So, what you consider the local vernacular to be. 2, the architect chap, I can't remember your name, sorry. It seems that the red line encloses the highways areas on that. I wasn't quite clear about that, although the second picture which showed that was a sort of site map, and then the next scheme map showed red lines around the buildings, not around the highways. So it wasn't clear where the red line was supposed to be. You talked about accessible cycle spaces. I'm sorry, I should know, but I don't know what an accessible cycle space is.
Okay, that's 4. I'm going to stop you there, Martin. Thank you. Do you want to take those questions first? Who'd like to field those questions? Is that Rob or?
Orestes, I think you were asked about the local employment.
I think he's dropped off the call.
He's dropped off.
Okay. I will ask the question on the red line. Start with. So the red line shown here, which I believe is your question, is the red line is the extent of the full planning permission. Okay, and that is shown as this green patch here. Apologies, maybe we should have kept it to red, but the green patch indicates the extent of the detailed planning permission, which does include the highways amendments to the roundabout, which are already permitted, and we do not intend to change anything in that area of permission. So we're only highlighting the changes to the permission, not things that are already permitted.
Okay, so the other questions were about local employment, local vernacular, and accessible cycle spaces.
I will answer the local vernacular question. So previously the scheme was if you like, should we say, a standard material palette of glass and aluminium. You can see here. Now what we want to change it to is something which reflects more the modern vernacular of this type of building in Cambridge. And so the buildings we are referencing, if I go back to those, if I can get to them, are buildings such as the Sainsbury's laboratory, which is in the park, the fairly recent Clyde Centre for Research, which uses this material palette of warm tones, more colours of the gilt brick, which you see in Accordia housing development. And then some of the features we thought were quite interesting are the features in Trinity Lane, which has this vertical chimneys, which we obviously we need to have a certain amount of verticality for flues on a laboratory building, and we've incorporated that.
Right, and then local employment?
Yeah, I can take that, Ed.
Thank you, Orestes.
Sure. So, yeah, when it comes to local employment, obviously, there are a number of different variants. We've got the tenant side, so tenants employing people primarily from the sort of local resources, and we've seen that very successfully on some of our other campuses at Granter Park and Babraham. But also Biomed itself, as we're looking at a number of other, sort of let's call it non-scientific or sort of, research-driven opportunities employment-wise. We're looking again at local resources. We have recently started working closely with an organization called Form the Future, where we're looking at implementing a plan to tap into sort of local talent at an earlier stage, sort of trying through a number of school placements within the sort of Cambridge region, and indeed targeting perhaps less privileged areas within Cambridge and advancing some of these placements, to try and create, if you like, an opportunity for everyone within the region to get access to some of these employment opportunities longer term. So that we're starting with them in the next few months.
Orestes, sorry, can I just ask you, and I don't want to prejudge what Councillor Smart was meaning, but I think it's possible that there might be a question around, will this actually genuinely be providing jobs for local people, or are a lot of the people coming to work at this premises likely to be from elsewhere?
I think drawing parallels with our other campuses in Cambridge, we've got over 1 million square feet. If you think about Granter Park, we've got about 4,000 employees there. Babraham, it's about 1,200 within our own assets. The data that we source, and we can make that available to the committee. We actually recently completed a travel plan at Granter Park, where we surveyed a big element of the workforce there. One of the questions was for them to define the postcodes, so that we can understand, so the traffic habits. And we find that a big majority of people that actually work, on the campus across many different, functions are indeed residents within the Cambridgeshire region. And we would expect the same to apply here. We've seen that, as I said, on other sites that we operate in Cambridge.
Thank you very much. I'm mindful that we've got other questions, but just to pick up on the accessible cycle spaces, could somebody explain?
Yeah, I can do that if you...
Thank you very much.
Shall I do that?
Can I just request that you keep your responses as succinct as possible, because we have other questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so primarily the accessible cycle parking spaces are slightly larger, so they can accommodate a range of non-standard cycles, such as bicycles, which offer good stability, also hand cycles as well, together with the recumbent cycles, and then also a wheelchair tandem as well. So it provided larger areas, I think as shown by Ed pointing in the middle there, for an alternative type of cycle to increase sustainability and accessibility to the site.
Chair, if I may make a brief statement here as well from an operational standpoint. Something that we found at Granter Park as an example, where we've managed to increase, almost triple the, if you like, mode from single cart to cycling, which actually, if you think about Granter being a more, dare I say, sort of, suburban location compared to this site, it's been very successful. The feedback that we're getting a lot from cyclists, keen cyclists that use bikes throughout the year, is it's one thing obviously providing the great infrastructure when it comes to off-road measures.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Orestes, I'm going to interrupt you again. I do apologise, but I think we have some other questions. Okay. I've got a whole range. So, right, Councillor Thornborough.
I'll be quick with my questions. You mentioned about the planting. Will the planting use recycled water for watering the plants? The landscaping, could it include some details so that skateboarders could use the space well? And in the future, is it possible for shared cars on the site? So if you cycle to or use public transport, but you need to do something during the day, could you use a shared car And my last question is the community building. Is that for the wider community space, or is it for the community within the technology park? And if it's for the wider community, how will they know about it?
Thank you, Councillor Thornborough. So planting, will it be watered by recycled water? Let's go with that one first.
Yeah, I'll take that question.
The answer
Yeah.
is yes?
Yes,
Splendid.
it will. Sorry, in the wider outline scheme, there is a suds basin, and we'll also be looking at suds for collecting rainwater, which will be used for or partly to water the planting. The planting scheme we're looking at is drought tolerant where possible as well. So we're doing it hand in hand. So it's quite a forward-thinking planting approach.
Lovely. What about skateboarding?
Skateboarding, I'll have to revert back to Orestes because skateboarding's a...
I think that sounds unlikely because it's quite stepped, isn't it, the site?
Yeah, it does bring with it some technical challenges in terms of the robustness of the paving, as you know. So I'm not sure if Orestes wants to take that from a management perspective.
Okay, shared cars. That's right. I mean, are you
Yeah, I think
planning any
it's-
use of shared cars for?
I think as part of the travel plan, there'll be a range of initiatives such as pool bikes for those people that want to drive there and cycle to meetings, but there will also potentially be the provision of a pool car or cars. So if people do arrive by public transport, they can use the cars to go off-site if needed.
Yeah, okay. And the community building, in fact, that was the question I was going to raise. Who will be able to use the community building?
I think the answer is both, Chair. You know, it will be both the people on the campus and the people in the community, access to the cafe. You know, there'll be a number of memberships available for the gym as well. And indeed for the space, what I call the conference space on the top floor, again, local organisations, charities, parishes. There will be a management team on site and a website. They can pre-book some of that space as well. We see that complementary because obviously out of hours, we expect to be most of the demand from the community, sort of late evenings, weekends, whilst during the day, the people on the campus will be able to make use as well.
Understand that to mean that you're going to offer these this booking of the community space for free? You said complimentary. Oh, no, you meant complimentary in the sense of hours, didn't you?
Yeah, sorry. Yes,
Would it be at a modest fee?
It will be, yes. It's just to cover the cost, if you like. We're not looking to make a profit.
Okay, thank you. Other questions then? Councillor Porra.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondered about the stacked cycle spaces. I think a lot of them were the double stackers. I'm aware that there are some issues with mobility, people lifting bikes up, so just wanted to note, I think we have had gas assist ones, but I'm sure CamCycle will input into the next stage. Water use, as Councillor Thornborough said, particularly labs, we're mindful that that can be an increased water use, so I'm sure the committee would welcome over and above our local plan anything that conserves water, recycles water, looking at toilets, flushing and things like that. Again, absolutely car clubs. I mean, it's positive about the showers and the extra bike parking. There are a considerable number of parking spaces, which I understand is compliant with the local plan, but I note that as you're making all these efforts, it will be very interesting, as some of our other sites have done a look at that multi-storey car park for whether that could be converted in future. And particularly for things like cargo bikes and adapted bikes, you're going to have people dropping their kids off and hopefully cycling to you on the greenways and things. So be very interested to see, obviously, when this comes forward, how you might consider addressing that. I think there weren't many questions there other than the one about the double stacking. Thank you.
Okay, so could somebody answer the question about double stacking? Because I was a bit concerned about that as well.
So, Ed, have you got those details available, or?
Sorry, we certainly would stick to the council. The permitted scheme has a recommendation or a request to be discharged on the details of the cycle that we're proposing, and we have certainly will work with the council cycle standards to achieve the correct provision of double stackers for that condition discharge. Is that clear?
Thank you. Just to let you know, that I know in previous applications, people have found, and indeed I have personally demonstrated, that I'm not very good at using double stacking stands. They're quite heavy, particularly for women to use, so just bear that in mind. There are some other questions. Councillor Khan.
You say, I note that concordant with the outline permission, you're only providing 5% of EV charging points in the car parking. I think the actual new cars now, it's something like 20% of new cars are electric. I realised that I just wondered if at a later date you wanted to increase the number, have you got the provision in terms of the electricity supply? And a question for Philippa Kelly, would they need additional planning permission, or would it be permitted to increase the number at a later date should they so desire?
Martin, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
I think, well, if you've got the numbers there, Ed, I think we've got 5% from day one, and then a further 5% infrastructure in place for future expansion. I'm not sure about the planning requirements.
You'd have the cabling underneath ready to use if you needed it.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay. An adequate electricity supply to the site?
We're just waiting to hear back from UKPN on that. We've made a number of recent inquiries.
Okay, so you can...
It wouldn't require additional planning permission, would it?
We'd have to take that away and have a look at the appropriate process for regularising that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you. I think my question really is to do with the community building. You're making the space available for a few things that you've mentioned, but one thing that we still seem to need in that community is child minding. Don't know if you've actually considered that, potentially, because I'm sure those who will be coming to work there will be people with young families, and that might be something much more useful and helpful for them.
Would you like to respond to that?
So I'll respond in the sense that the building we're providing has flexibility to it. So the upper floor has a flexible open space which we intend to provide, as Orestes has said, the ability of the community to use that. So if somebody wanted to set up a childcare club or something, I'm sure that would be possible. I think Orestes may come back on this, but I think in this first permission, we're only doing one building to start with. The greater campus, I would say that certainly this is something that Orestes has been looking at on Grant Park and other things. Is that right, Orestes? So I'm sure there will be
there will be. So there is a Bright Horizons daycare centre at Holborn at Capital Park, which we understand has got some capacity, certainly to accommodate phase one. Specifically, when it comes to the wider campus, we've held discussions at the preliminary stage with Peterhouse College that own other holdings in the area, and there are a couple of options that we can explore at later phases to establish a dedicated daycare centre in the vicinity of the site.
That would be off-site, would it, Orestes?
Yes, it would be a short walking distance, yeah.
Okay. I saw Councillor Williams, John Williams, did you have your hand up? No? Councillor Fain? And I'm also mindful that Councillor Smart had some more questions, so don't worry. And some others, yeah, okay. So Councillor Fain? Councillor Fain is trying to put, here we are, the microphone that works.
Thank you. Chair, I note the focus on sustainable travel and also sustainability in terms of increased reliance on renewables. In relation to sustainable travel, obviously an increased focus you're proposing on bicycles, and reference was made in relation to the travel plan to the greenways. That tends to be focusing on cyclists coming from east and west in Cambridge, I just wondered whether in relation to the travel plan, consideration will be given to cyclists coming from the north and south. I represent Shelford Ward, for instance, and some cyclists currently go to Fulbourn along Limekiln Road, as an example. It may be beyond the scope of this application. And just briefly, in relation to renewable energy, I just wonder what consideration has been given to passive cooling, perhaps in relation to heat pumps or other options. Chair, I've recognised there may not be time to deal with all these questions now.
Thank you very much. So would you like to respond on the sustainable travel issue? About whether you'll be linking up or bearing
Yes,
in
the
mind
original,
people travelling from north and south?
Yeah, the original permission had quite a lot of detail about connecting to the cycleway that runs along the Fulbourn Road and up into Cherry Hinton and beyond. I think Quarry Hill Road's a bit outside our control here. We're not proposing any amendments there, but we are proposing some major amendments to that roundabout to make it more accessible and safer for cyclists and pedestrians alike. So that's certainly in the permission, but not something we're changing here.
No, okay, thank you very much. And I expect you're thinking about passive cooling, are you?
Yes.
We will be looking at it, yeah. We will be looking at SOC pumps as well as part of the design here for the building.
Okay, can I just clarify to Councillor Carla Hoffman, we do not normally take questions from local members, but I will, at the end of the questions that from in the chamber, I'll come to you last, if I may. So, Councillor Levine.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure it's very welcome, this shift away from cars and towards bicycles. The cycle store, bicycle theft in Cambridge, as I'm sure you know, is a serious problem. So will there be very good CCTV system and good security on the bicycle? I certainly recommend it as the important thing to do. Can I ask whether the car park, the multi-storey car park, will be chargeable? Will you charge them to park cars in the multi-storey car park? And lastly, talking about EV charging, other sites install passive charging. Could you do that? Thank you.
Very briefly, if I can answer some of these questions, so there will be no charge for actually parking the site. There may be charge, to cover the cost for EV charging. That will be arranged, with the tenants and the management team. I'll defer, Martin, to you about the passive charging. Very briefly, in the CCTV, the answer is yes. This will be a secure location as far as the cyclists are concerned. So yeah, there will be CCTV and an operations team on site to safeguard that. Martin, do you want to take the passive charging?
Yeah, I think we'd have to take that away, Orestes, and just have a look at that. I don't think there's anything proposed as part of this application, nor was there on the previous one, but it's certainly something that we can have a look at going forward.
Sorry, Orestes, we lost you slightly there, but the answer to the first part of the question is there'd be no charge for parking your car in the car park, but there would be a charge for charging your car in the car park.
Yeah,
very reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. And you were going to look at CCTV. Right. So, Councillor Smith.
There is a considerable difference in employment density between offices and R&D. So, if you're pitching this in a piecemeal manner, the question is there going to be further changes in use from offices to R&D, given that you specialise in this form of space? And therefore, what's the impact going to be on parking spaces per person by the time you've finished? So we're talking about quite a big difference in density, but about, what is it, square feet per person? There's 12 square metres per person for an office, and about 40 square metres for someone in R&D. So it's a big difference. So what's the impact going to be? Are we going to see more spaces per person at the end of this as a result? Because what I'm saying is the reduction in car
Yes.
parking spaces going to be proportionate to the forecast employment density. I think this refers to Councillor Thornborough's, or some of Paula's point, I think, about change of use of the multi-storey car park. Are you actually going to be building something that actually won't be needed in the future, and therefore is it, and as what part of the sustainability of the development is its adaptability, and will this space be adaptable? Sorry, that's quite
So shall we
convoluted, but
let
it's
them
actually
answer
quite
that?
a big picture question, isn't it?
Yeah. So will the reduction in parking spaces be proportionate to the reduction in footage per person in lab versus office?
I can answer that if you like. So the car park doesn't only, that serves the entire future development, which is in outline and has only a quantum associated with it. So the reduction in the car parking in the car park relates to all of that. So obviously at the moment it is a future development and it's a speculative development. So we have no true insight into whether we're going to be 70% laboratory or 10% laboratory in those future buildings, but certainly it is acknowledged that there will be a reduction in the number of people, so the trip generation, and the car park, as we get into detailed design, will be designed to be demountable and adaptive over time. So that's something that, it's a kit of parts that can be, changed over time. So I think the answer is it's slightly unknown. We have reduced the car parking by over 100 in this first phase. Second phases, therefore, might not need any additional car parking if there are more labs. So we may not have to build any more car parking in the future, potentially.
Yeah, it's also worth noting the Planning Commission has a car park management plan built into one of the conditions. And so there's going to be a sort of element of planning and managing and monitoring so that it can be controlled as things develop. There's
Okay,
that
thank
built
you.
into it already.
Thank you for that. Just to let you know, members, if we haven't already stopped, I'm going to stop us on this particular presentation at 15:15. So I just want to let you know, stick your hands up now. So Katie Thornborough, and I'm also bearing in mind Councillor Smart.
Well,
don't worry.
you could come back with the answer, but again, for change of use changing from office space to life science spaces there's a lot of difference in my understanding on the water use within the building. So will that be part of the application, or will it be part of an environmental impact assessment update? Thank you.
So a couple of points there. In terms of the use, the Planning Commission is flexible across EG uses. So that includes offices, R&D and light industry. So there's a flexible use across the site, and we're not proposing any change of use as part of the application. In terms of water, the application, we've rerun the BREEAM. It's BREEAM Excellent, and that's going to continue as according to the approved Planning Commission, so including the water credits as agreed and approved.
Thank you. So I'm going to come back. I'll come to Richard Williams, and then to Councillor Smart.
It's actually fine, Chair. Councillor Thornborough just asked exactly
Oh,
the
okay.
question I was going to ask.
Splendid. Okay, so Councillor Smart, you get another go.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. It's very kind. So I had a lot of questions, but I'll focus on one area mostly, which is just the building itself, which is what often gets left out in planning committees, I think. But firstly, thank you for confirming that there will be school placements as part of the local employment schemes you talked about. So just to go to the building and perhaps a little bit on the landscaping as well. You've said that aluminium and glass is not modern, and you've talked about using I think you mentioned stone. I think it's probably reconstituted stone, and you talked about that being sustainable. So, I'm not so clear about that. I mean, reconstituted stone is made from concrete, basically. If you were talking about, say, a building like Amin Tahas at 15 Clerkenwell Close in London, which drive down the embodied CO2 by 92% and less than a steel structure, and internally to negative CO2, that would be interesting. But it seems to me here what we've got in front of us is a reconstituted stone clad building.
Councillor Smart, can I just ask you, what is your question?
Well, the question is, what are you getting at with this building? You've talked about it being a local vernacular. I can understand that, what this local vernacular is supposed to be. And you've talked about it having a off-colour facade. Does that mean beige? You've talked about native buffer planting. What's native? I mean, the important thing about architecture is that it needs to respond to context. I'm not sure how this building is responding to its context. I don't understand your presentation.
Sure, there was really a question in there, but if you want to respond, you're most
The
welcome.
question is, Chair, how does it respond to context?
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I can respond to that. We are looking at a modern Cambridge vernacular that we've picked up in the images we've shown. Now, in terms of the materiality, we're looking to improve the building facade performance by reducing the amount of glass, therefore reducing the overall solar gain and increasing the energy performance of the building, and that almost naturally results in the building having a less glassy appearance, a more solid appearance, which allows us to introduce more insulation and make the performance better. In terms of the colour, I think you questioned that. There's obviously a predominance of the gilt clay coloured brick in Cambridge, and the use of imported stone actually in Cambridge, and we want to reflect that tone in the building rather than how it was before, which was kind of blue aluminium. So I guess that answers the question. In terms of embodied carbon, we will be looking closely at embodied carbon as we develop the scheme. The majority of carbon in the building will be within the concrete frame of the building, and so as we develop that, we'll be looking to reduce the amount of concrete used and replace any concrete or supplement concrete with GGBS cement replacement to get that embodied carbon down as low as we can. But we haven't got the answers to that at this point because it's...
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. And I'm now going to just invite Councillor Carla Hoffman. If you have any questions, Councillor Hoffman, be careful not to express any views. Thank you.
I won't. Right, where to start? Light pollution and energy use. Will you be having internal motion sensors and external low-level lighting? I tend to find if I look at new developments I've been involved in Canary Wharf, a lot of those lights are left on at night and obviously drain the energy supply is one question, so light pollution. Secondly, has a study been done regarding the trees counteracting the heat being generated from the stone buildings and the paving? Has there been a balance? I see trees in pictures, but they don't, you know, I don't know if that's going to be the actual ones. Bicycles, I agree with Councillor Bradnam that the double stackers I've seen don't tend to get used because of the clunkiness and the difficulty of securing your bicycle. Has the study been done as to how much they actually get used by cycle users? And will they also have an electric charging point where the bicycles are? Because a lot of bicycles these days are also electric. And then lastly, will the bicycle store be close to security office? I am aware of bicycle stores from big companies that regularly get professionally broken into. And if the store is close to a security office, then that's less likely to happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Hoffman. So, would you like to respond to that? Let's start with light pollution and energy I think that's spillage of light outside and lights inside, responding to people in the building.
A light impact study has been undertaken on the site and its surroundings, so that's been done. The buildings themselves will use PIRs, which means that when the spaces are unoccupied, the lighting turns off, and they will also use photosensitive lighting to the perimeter. So when the sun's bright, the lights to the perimeter turn off, and the buildings will, to meet BREEAM requirements, also have blinds which will be 95% opaque. So when those blinds are dropped, they cut out 95% of the light, and the glazing itself will be in the region of 60 to 70% reduction of light transmission. So all of those things together add up to a very low, and as I say, we have actually reduced the amount of glazing as well. So all of those things together add up to an improvement upon on the permitted scheme, I'd say.
Okay, the next one was the balance of trees in your paved areas to reduce heat impact.
Stop at 15:15.
Pardon?
You said you were going to stop.
I did say that, but I'm just allowing these questions to be answered, Councillor Burton. Thank you.
Yeah, I can quickly answer that. Yeah, in terms of the overall tree and canopy cover in the MMA application, we are looking to increase the amount of trees overall in this scheme. We're also looking at the actual mature height and width of canopy cover as well to see how it does reduce solar radiation. So we are looking at that in a bit more detail when the detailed planting plans are coming through. So it's certainly something that we're looking at.
Okay, so then three questions about bikes. Double stacking, EV charging, will there be any for bikes? And will there be security on the bike store?
So the cycle store is quite close to the reception and security centre, and will be CCTV connected to that at all times. So we are and alarmed, so that should be okay. In terms of double stackers, yeah, we are aware that the planning authority has a preference for a particular type of double stacker, so we'll work closely to discharge the condition with the council in the preferred, and I think it is gas-assisted one that they like, the preferred double stacking arrangement, and we've put in as many. We'll carefully work with the council to get the perfect balance of generous
and will there be
chevron hoops for people who don't want to use a double stacker.
And will there be EV charging for bikes?
We've put charging in. Oh, no, I think a lot of the bikes have removable batteries. There is some concerns about EV charging bikes in enclosed spaces, so we will investigate that, and it will be part of the condition discharge, I'd say. But I don't have an answer on that yet because there are some fire risks associated with lots of bikes all charging up. So.
Okay, thank you very much indeed
Thank
for
you.
answering all those questions. I'm going to call a halt there if that's okay. So I'm going to thank you very much indeed for your presentations. Thank you for answering questions. We'll call a break now before we have our next presentation, and I propose and to start again at past, members. We're at 20 past now, just 10 minutes. Thank you very much. James, could you, are we ready, members? We're going to go live. Okay, thank you. Thank you, members. So, welcome back to the Joint Development Control Committee on the 21st of June. So we move on to our second agenda item on officer briefings. This is agenda item 6, and we're going to be having an officer and developer briefing on the Cambridge Biomedical Campus. This is a joint presentation from officers and members of the Cambridge Biomedical Campus development teams. So that's officers of our planning department and officers of the campus team, to provide the committee with an overview of the future development strategy for the Addenbrooke site. And those of you who've been members of JDCC for some time will remember that we have asked for this in the past because we wanted to see the planning behind the development of the site. As a committee, we've previously raised concerns about members being unsighted on the master planning process for the campus, and that planning applications are coming to JDCC in the absence of that knowledge, which makes it difficult for members to consider them given the complex nature of the site. So today is an opportunity to hear about the emerging strategic master plan for the campus, the aspirations for the existing Addenbrooke site, and to understand how it's anticipated that existing and planned development will integrate with other projects. This session will provide an opportunity for members to learn how the emerging master plan for the existing campus will seek to deal with matters of transport and connectivity, public realm and open space, and sustainability as the campus continues to grow. So I'll ask the officers and developers to introduce themselves and their colleagues assisting with the presentation, and I'll invite councillors to ask questions once these presentations have finished. So I know we have Georgie Thompson from Quad, thank you. Aphrodite Stathopoulou, thank you, from Allies and Morrison, and Karen Charlton, thank you, from Cambridge University Hospital Trust. And we have officers Terry D'Souza, thank you, Principal Planning Policy Officer, and Michael Sexton, who's the Principal Planning Officer for Strategic Sites. So thank you very much all for attending. And remember, I'm going to remind you again after we've had the presentation of our responsibilities. So would you like to give your presentation? Is it starting off with you, Terry? Thank you.
It is, thank you, Chair. Okay, so you should be able to see this on the screen. Okay, yes, so thank you very much. So, yeah, as the Chair said, I'm Terry D'Souza, I work in the Planning Policy team. One of my roles is working on the emerging Greater Cambridge Local Plan, and in particular the site allocation that that plan will contain. I'm here today to provide an update to members on the engagement that we've had with the biomedical campus over recent months, which is helping to inform the allocation within the emerging local plan. But towards the end of my slides, I'll also set out how officers believe we can support members, not only of this committee, but of the other planning committees, and how they can consider planning applications that come forward at the biomedical campus prior to the adoption of the Greater Cambridge Joint Local Plan. So, as the Chair just mentioned, this was previously raised by now the former Chair of this committee in September last year, that the committee was largely unsighted on the overall master plan of the biomedical campus, in particular dealing with more recent planning applications, as well as transport projects within and around the campus.
And by myself the previous year.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, you know, officers recognise the fact that this is a complicated site, and therefore it's very difficult for the committee as decision makers to be able to, you know, make decisions without having that holistic overview of what's happening within the wider area. I just wanted to make it clear that this presentation and the briefing that I'm giving this morning is about how we deal with early development on the existing campus, and this is not about the merits of further Greenbelt release within the campus, which is something that we are pursuing in parallel through the Greater Cambridge Local Plan process. So just to recap for members, I'm sure you're all really aware or familiar with this. So in the adopted Cambridge Local Plan from 2018, there is an allocation for the biomedical campus, which sets out the campus as a local, regional and a national role. in terms of biomedical biotechnology research, as well as clinical healthcare. And the image there shows the southern fringe area of major change for the campus on the far east of the image. In terms of the policy requirements for the site, I won't go through all of these in detail, but specifically picking up on things like key views, connectivity and movement is a real live issue in and around the campus, and the policy is aware of this. So picking up on cycle and pedestrian infrastructure, public transport as well, including the park and ride and guided busway. And it also picks up on other environmental issues such as water courses and sustainability issues such as the energy network. The Cambridge local plan also notes that there is an existing strategic master plan for the site, which was developed in 2010, and this picked up on the key issues such as key routes and hierarchy, public realm, building, massing, land uses, phasing and sustainability. And it was clear that this master plan would need to be updated in due course in order for the councils to consider planning applications as and when they come forward. In terms of the South Cambridgeshire adopted local plan from 2018 as well, the biomedical campus was proposed to be extended further south, which is highlighted on the image within Area E2. That was a Greenbelt release site, and that was the argument for that was based on the local, regional and national need for further expansion, and that land is commonly referred to as the Phase 3 land within the campus. The policy did require that any future update to the 2010 master plan needed to therefore include this parcel of land, which it didn't include previously. Again, the policy sets out a number of requirements, slightly different to the adopted Cambridge Local Plan 1, mainly centred around things such as landscaped edges, protection of environmental sites and areas, such as the springs at Nine Wells and Hobson Brook and the conduit, as well as relieving visitor pressures on Nine Wells, local nature preserve and biodiversity issues. So since the adoption of the local plan, and I'm sure I've missed some from this slide, so apologies if I have, but there have been a number of applications that have come forward within the site, and including the delivery and opening of the Royal Papworth Hospital, the delivery of the Park and Gardens. A number of buildings were also constructed in response to COVID, including the surge centres and additional temporary ward spaces. We also have the Children's Hospital, which had to demonstrate how it fitted within the existing campus master plan from 2010. Now, we know that the growth of the campus in recent years, which has really been accelerated, I would say over sort of the last five years or so, as well as the enhanced accessibility, so Cambridge South Railway Station, the proposed CSET scheme, and others, really means that we need to think about the master plan in a slightly different way to make sure it's up to date and reflects the changing context of the site. Just to remind members very briefly on the local plan first proposals consultation from late 2021. So the first proposal set out that the local plan will support the development of the campus, very similar to the adopted local plans, but an updated, and again highlighting the fact that an updated master plan will be required for the campus to make sure that there is a kind of holistic approach to development within the campus rather than a piecemeal plot by plot case. There was the possibility that there would be further greenbelt release to the south of the campus, but that would need to be obviously addressed through the local plan process, and that would be something that we were exploring at that point in time and still are, but really seeking views from our wider communities to understand what they thought about that proposition. And that's something that members, particularly of the Joint Local Plan Advisory Group, have been briefed on previously through officer briefings on the responses to that consultation. The policy, or the proposed policy, was very clear in the fact that in order to release any further land for development, the best use is made of the existing campus in the first instance, and the fact that the policy would seek a comprehensive approach to a new master plan. So what have officers been doing in terms of helping to